it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello and welcome back, everybody. I am excited with today's guest. Today's guest is Joanna Krotz, and her book is called Being Equal Doesn't Mean Being the Same. She is the founder of the Author's Playbook, and Joanna she has launched this business, A Woman's Playbook, and has written books. She's interviewed amazing people, hundreds of males and female entrepreneurs over many, many years. She's a national magazine editor, author, journalist, online small business columnist, and host of a web radio show. You know what? I'm going to let Joanna speak for herself at this point because I have so much I want to chat with you about today, Joanna. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. Sounds like a mouthful just to get all those things out. They're not all going on at the same time, I can assure you.
I know, and amazing and fabulous accolades to you for making the difference in the world of women in business.
I appreciate you saying that. You know, it's one voice, but you do what you can. You amplify it where you can, and it's taken a while to find that voice. So I appreciate having the opportunity to raise it.
So tell me, how did this all get started?
Meaning the Women's Playbook or my entire life?
No. The Women's Playbook. Like, how did you get behind women in business, women entrepreneurs? Yeah. Where did this all start from?
I understand. I think way back in what's called the second wave of feminism, which is during the 20th century, I actually drank the Kool-Aid. I thought women could, should, would change the world. And I looked around and I could see how women's thinking and behavior and values and ideas and whole kind of attitudes was dismissed. I mean, women were not valued in the boardroom, in academia, on the sports field, you name it. And I thought that if I went into media, I could make a difference and change some of those perceptions for men as well as for women. It wasn't just up women, it was also let's get educated together. And I think that's always been a factor in what I have been engaged in, which is not always the case. It's sometimes the case for women who are activists that I am very eager to bring men into the fold and to talk with co-ed groups as opposed to only women.
So when you got started with, and really behind this movement, and I love that you're including the and taking this from an education stance, and it's not a woman's stance, it's a men and women together will make a difference. Mm-hmm. There must have been a hell of a lot of early challenges that came your way.
Yeah, that's for sure. I have been at a string of national magazines, and I was always looking for the next job. A lot of it, I think, had to do with that I was hired as an editor. I was hired as a change agent. And then I would sort of go in and say, wow, look, you could do this and we can do that. I mean, based on the mission of the magazine, not changing the world, look at this idea and look at this possibility. And so it was, okay, great, why don't you come join us? And then a year later or so, not so much. People don't really want to change a great deal. And I was always looking for the next, catalyst, the next excitement, the next creativity. So I kept having all these different positions. I mean, I was at a sex magazine for a while. I was at a left-of-center political magazine. I was one of the founding editors at Metropolitan Home magazine when design and what was going on in terms of boomer nesting, I guess you'd call it, was really almost radical. I mean, there was a period in this country where buying a stereo was considered an act of rebellion because, showing my age, because you didn't buy bedroom, furnishings. You bought something to make music that was that was unbelievable.
That's,
So all of this sort of combined, and all along the route, it was really clear that somehow women were not valued. And then by the time I got to Time Inc., where I was for some years at Money Magazine, which continues to be the premier service magazine, the premier personal finances magazine
right.
in the world. Again, Time Inc. was a very male culture. Even when I was there, and I was there late, you know, in the early days and all the feisty days, all those times when they would have these drink wagons go by when people were closing. I was not there during that time, but there were definitely barriers to women. And then along the route, the editor who was running it at the time decided to take a look at women. He was a pretty egalitarian guy, editor, and we had this big team that looked at his really inspiration, how women treat money differently than men do. And this was maybe turn of the century times, about the year 2000, or a little earlier actually. And it was astonishing because it was Time Inc. We had so many resources to draw upon. You just don't have that anymore in media, and you didn't have that at most magazines. Most magazines I was at used freelance resources. This was a full-blown staff effort. And it turned out that nobody had pulled together this kind of data, which has now become litany in almost every industry, that women do not spend money the way men do. Women don't invest the way men do. Women are in and out of the workforce, and they therefore save less than men. They take care of relatives. They take care of kids. They're paid less. And it's become, as I say, this just Bible of what finances are. But nobody had looked at all these different silos before and pulled together that data from Bureau of Census and the Bureau of Labor and finance industry surveys and so on and so on. So it was really exciting and kind of opened my eyes in a very statistical and a very factual way to what the differences are. And I think that really set me up to look at the Women's Playbook and to think about, wait a minute, it's not really lesser and it's not anything but different. Different being equal, but not the same. So it's been a journey, I guess I could say.
And you know, the name of your book, Being Equal, doesn't mean being the same.
Right.
You know, I'm fascinated, and I have been for many, many years on women and money. Just because, you know, when I was coming up through the printing industry, especially in my early years, which was the late 80s and early 90s, I couldn't do, as a woman in sales at that time, I couldn't do business with the big boys. They wouldn't even talk to me as a print salesperson. And it wasn't until I actually connected with the publishing industry myself, because publishing was known as a lower paid industry, hence women had higher paying jobs, the higher positions in publishing, in marketing managers and director of sales or director of advertising. And I was able to actually connect with the actual buyers and start earning a living myself. So it's near and dear to my heart that women have earned less. Women have had less opportunity. Women manage money very differently than men.
Oh, this is true. And by the way, there are strengths and weaknesses. I mean, I'm again not of that persuasion that women are perfect and men have to, you know, come up to our level. There's been a lot of that, less so than they used to be. But no, it's just, and this difference becomes, so the definition of diversity is not let's make everyone look the same, sound the same, talk the same, behave the same. It's let's make sure that everyone is treated the same, even though they behave differently. And somehow diversity has become, let's turn everyone who's a minority into white men. I just don't know how that happened. I mean, I'm exaggerating, right? But
yeah,
but there
that would be a pretty sad state, I got to tell you.
Right. But you understand what I mean. People say let's become diverse, and what they mean is let's bring in people of color, let's bring in people of different religious persuasions and different class, perhaps, and female, and let's make the standards for their success based on the power structure, which is the one that works for white men who were running the show for God knows how many centuries. So there's got to be some shift, some seismic shift, and that's what I like to call diversity.
So what successes have you seen for yourself in your own building of this business, and in the ripple effect, what successes have you seen in the culture we have today?
Yeah, it's been start and stop. I mean, the Me Too movement, which God knows is astonishing and fabulous and amazing and sudden. I didn't see that coming. When sexual harassment didn't even have a name about 30 years ago. And some women who are really in the activist movement got together and said, you know what, when you give something a name, you can actually legislate and talk about it. And if you don't name it, and define it, you can't do anything about it. So sexual harassment didn't get named, even though it existed for millennia, right? And I'm sure you suffered from it in your printing industry. I certainly suffered from it. But until it got a name, and I would say that was maybe 70s or 80s, not really that long ago. So the fact that we're here at this juncture, I hope is going to change stuff. I mean, I'm encouraged. I'm a little wary. What was the year of the woman? 1995? Was that what it was? Do you remember that?
Was it 95?
It was somewhere.
It was somewhere in the mid-90s. All I could say is the mid-90s. I could have put a year to it. So
there you go. So, and here we are. You know, how many these decades later. So I'm hoping that there is now a change. Certainly, social media is both a strength and a weakness. I mean, it's both helping the movement and also pulling down people who are trying to make change. I mean, it's a vehicle, not a movement. So everything is moving at a very geometric pace, and I hope it changes. However, there are fewer women in Congress in America than there were 10 years ago. There are fewer women elected to office, and now we're seeing a groundswell based on the current administration and a reaction to it that may change the status quo. But the state houses across the country, very male, very full of sexual harassment, according to the papers I read. I don't know what you've been seeing. I'm hoping there will be this shift. I'm hoping the younger generation. And you know, the thing that it's a little counterintuitive. The thing I'm almost most encouraged about is that the next gen attitudes, the millennium attitudes, women in that generation tended to be eyebrow raised about all this. Listen, there's a fire going on. We have to put it out. We have to take care of what's going on with women. And they're like, give me a break. You know, I have an education. I have a good job, for the women who do, by the way, not all women. But I don't really see what you're talking about. And now they're beginning to say, wow, there is something there. So I'm hoping this is cross-generational, cross-class, cross-race, and it would be terrific. I hope this Time's Up Hollywood initiative is successful. I certainly do.
So are you, how do you feel about the millennials and they're up and coming, you know, they're getting older. They're starting to have kids of their own. They are becoming, the older millennials are managers today. Do you see anything different there, or are you encouraged or discouraged?
Yeah, there are some substantive, and I've actually covered some of this in the book. And being equal doesn't mean being the same, where I run down what are classically, generally female characteristics, both genetic, in other words, biologic, and sociological, and then what are generally considered male characteristics, both hardwired and sociological. And then I do go into some distinction among the generations. So male millennials tend to be more open. Again, this is not all of them, but as a generation, we've seen this. They're more accepting of different sexual identities. They're more interested in having a life, not willing to give up everything to a job. They want some work-life balance, and that means generally that they're willing to work with women partners if they have a woman partner, but certainly with some kind of live-in partner. So there's a difference. The women, I think, it's going to be interesting. They've been extremely resistant to this idea that we still need a women's movement. And what happens, and we've seen this over and over in statistics, and it's been proven by many surveys, that men and women who start out with graduate degrees or undergraduate degrees tend to move ahead with careers at the same rate, same promotion, similar money, salary, from whatever, 2021 through age 30. And at age 30, suddenly there starts to be a gap. And it's often because women then have a baby and that's the end of that tune, right? Or it's just that women don't advance beyond a certain level. So the millennials are getting to that stage where, wow, I can't have a kid. What am I supposed to do? I can't afford it. And it's going to be, and should be, a social problem. And people consider it a girl problem. And that's always made me crazy. You know, it's not something we're addressing as a society. It's like girls are supposed to figure this out. You know, it's their problem. So we'll see. I mean, I hope that challenge activates millennial men and women as we go forward.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that's great.
I will stand with you and behind that, and love to see that.
It would be a good thing.
Absolutely. I have to ask, because, you know, one of my strong teaching philosophies is always about developing great relationships in this world. And there's no separation for me of life and business in the sense of strong relationships. In your career path, has there been significant relationships that you could say, like, gee, these relationships have made an impact on where I am today or the decisions I made?
Yeah, but it's not just one. It's been sequential, and it's been different people for different reasons. One of the real revelations for me was getting to a magazine when I was hired as a top-ranked editor, and I had come from a place where it was extremely rigid. You had to behave a certain way, and there were certain ways you managed and did the job and so on. And I brought all that to the new position. And they sat me down about a month into it and said, "What are you doing?" Well, I mean, we thought you were going to be like this. I mean, I'm changing. That wasn't the conversation exactly, but that was the 411. You don't have to behave that way. You don't have to be so structured and stuff. Just like be yourself. That's fine. And I was just amazed. It was so liberating. It was so freeing. It made the entire experience terrific. It meant everyone was really interested in giving their all, as opposed to trying to please whoever was the next in line. And that stayed with me always. It didn't work. In several places I went after that, it just wasn't allowed. But I had this model that gave me the freedom to say, you know what, this isn't it. I'm not doing this. So I did not behave that way as best I could. You know, I just wasn't going to toe the line in nasty ways. And there's management styles where you're thrown down the stairs, and then if you pick yourself up and climb up again, they say, "Oh, I see, she can climb up the stairs," and then they throw you down again. I mean, I never got the rationale for that. No. But it's certainly it's endemic, isn't it? So that was one. Others, when I started my own business, and when I was responsible for bringing in whatever income I was going to make, when I was solely responsible for connecting with a client or with a project or with creating a vision that would get me the job, then I worked and continue to do so as a boutique content provider. So I do digital and print and any kind of content that has a branding or a mission. And I could sit across from someone and say, "I see, this is what you're about. This is what I can do for you." Again, it was incredibly liberating. I felt empowered. I felt excited. I felt creative. And I did not have to worry about the politics. I could do whatever I want. I could walk away from the job if I wanted to.
Right.
It was fabulous. And of course, you get some nasty situations, but being in charge of my own destiny also is what led me to write that book. Because the book, Being Equal Doesn't Mean Being the Same, is also a handbook to how to be an entrepreneur. Because I think that's the best thing women can do for themselves in this climate until things change radically or at the root. Being in charge of your own fate gives you passion, purpose, hopefully profits, and I think that will move you forward. And then you can decide how much time you want to spend on the business, how much time you want to spend on your life, how much time you want to spend going to Machu Picchu, and or the kids. You know, so. I think it's and it's not for all women, but I think it's one of the better options out there right now.
So I often ask my guests one piece of advice. Would you put that as your one piece of advice, or is there a different one piece of advice
No,
that you give women business owners, women leaders today?
Yeah, it's hard to boil it down, of course. I would say be careful what you wish for, not because of the cliche explanation, which is, you know, when you get it, what do you do? That's not it. But when you wish for something, that's what you're going to spend your time, talent, and treasure pursuing. And that's what's going to define whatever journey and efforts and resources you have in your life. So choose wisely. I would say that.
Fair enough. And please tell our listeners, how do they get a hold of being equal doesn't mean being the same? How do we learn more and follow you? And you're an amazing writer, an interesting woman to just chat with.
Oh, thank you so much, Ivy. It's been a pleasure. The book is available on Amazon. Being Equal Doesn't Mean Being the Same. And on Barnes & Noble, if people are still using that one, I feel bad for them. So bn.com, Amazon. And there's a digital version, so you can download it. It doesn't have to be print. My Twitter account, my Twitter handle, Joanna L. Krotz, at Joanna L. Krotz. And the Women's Playbook has a website and also Facebook stuff, which is womensplaybook.com.
So please join me in checking out the Women's Playbook and downloading or purchasing Being Equal Doesn't Mean Being the Same. And follow Joanna. She's an amazing woman, an interesting writer. I just truly enjoyed learning about you as well as chatting about you. So thank you so much for being here today and joining us.
My pleasure, Ivy. I wish everyone listening and yourself the best of luck.
Thank you.
Take care.